visibilidade. Se nós olharmos, então, ao longo dos anos, uma janela de praticamente 10 anos, a colaboração nacional na parte inferior ela tem aumentado, mas a colaboração internacional do Brasil ela variou pouco em relação a 10 anos atrás. Caiu e agora retoma. A gente pode discutir um pouco sobre isso mais à frente, né? Mas ela precisa ser aumentada, né? A mesma coisa, a proporção de artigos brasileiros nas revistas científicas top dentro de cada área, você tem um valor médio. Então, vocês vejam bem que na parte inferior são o número de artigos brasileiros nas 10% melhores revistas em todas as áreas. Então, vocês vejam que há uma variação pequena. E na parte superior, a gente observa a participação das revistas, das publicações brasileiras nas revistas top 25%. Então, aqui embaixo, top 10 e aí em cima, top 25%. Então, é isso aí. O grande desafio que nós temos é de aumentar a visibilidade do conhecimento gerado no Brasil. E aqui mostra, novamente, quer dizer, um comparativo com França, Canadá, Itália e Coreia do Sul em termos de colaboração internacional. Vejam, por exemplo, que na França nós temos quase 47% de todas as publicações francesas têm um endereço fora da França, né? 44% no Canadá, 40% na Itália, e a Coreia do Sul e o Brasil oscilam aí em torno de 25% a 26%. Então, a gente tem um desafio grande de elevar esses índices de parceria e colaboração internacional. E não, por conta disso, nós temos aqui vários representantes de agências de fomento internacionais, de modo a reforçar a importância dessas parcerias e projetos conjuntos de pesquisa entre grupos brasileiros e grupos exteriores. Vocês observam os outros países, né? França, Canadá, Itália, na parte superior dessa figura, e a Coreia do Sul e o Brasil na linha inferior. Então, nós temos uma janela grande de oportunidade para estimularmos essa colaboração internacional. Nós temos também, em função, como eu falei no início, do desenvolvimento da ciência brasileira, né? A possibilidade de desenvolver titulações duplas, né? Então, algumas características importantes são o fato de nós termos alunos melhor treinados, esses títulos que são reconhecidos mundialmente, e também o desenvolvimento de uma força de trabalho global. Nós temos alguns desafios, né? Que passam, por exemplo, pela aceitação de currículos entre as instituições. Esse é um aspecto difícil hoje ainda de nós atingirmos, né? Um ajuste das estruturas curriculares entre as universidades, né? E também nós temos uma série de características na parte da pesquisa, que são uma divisão do trabalho, né? E também, consequentemente, geração de novas ideias, o número de publicações aumenta, nós temos maior exposição, maior visibilidade internacional dos trabalhos, né? E o desafio nós temos aí, realmente, algumas políticas institucionais podem limitar um pouco o escopo dessa colaboração. Mas como é que a gente pode, talvez, desenvolver algumas parcerias bem-sucedidas, né? Nós precisamos, primeiro, ter uma estratégia de internacionalização da instituição. A gente tem que estar presente, e a UFMG tem avançado bastante nessa área, né? Incorporar essa internacionalização, a sua visão institucional, né? Precisa ter um desenvolvimento de uma estratégia de parcerias, quer dizer, não dá para fazer parceria com todo mundo, você tem que definir os seus parceiros, identificar, né, dentro de um quadro global bastante abrangente, precisa ter diretrizes, né, para que isso seja possível. E, evidentemente, nós precisamos ter uma infraestrutura física para acolher os pesquisadores e os estudantes que vêm do exterior. Então, fluxo nos dois sentidos. Então, nós precisamos realmente ter uma estrutura voltada a essa internacionalização. Né? Alguns pontos também, rapidamente, quer dizer, a liderança da UFMG, por exemplo, é uma posição que a qualifica para interagir com as principais universidades do mundo. Esse desenvolvimento de um suporte interno para lidar com esse tema. Há necessidade, evidentemente, de orçamento. Não adianta falar que prioridade, mas se não tem orçamento, não é prioridade. Prioridade é quando realmente tem recurso financeiro para apoiar essas iniciativas. Tem que ter um potencial de longo prazo e avaliação, então, da demanda frente às diferentes iniciativas dos parceiros. Para a gente escolher o parceiro, a gente precisa conhecer bem, né? E nós temos que ter interesses que reforçam principalmente as ações, as missões da universidade. Pesquisa, envolvimento com cursos de graduação, pós-graduação, principalmente a definição de foco, como eu falei, escolher áreas nas quais a universidade tem interesse em dar um salto qualitativo, né? E essas parcerias são todas baseadas em complementariedade e simetria, né? Eu tenho dito que, se nós olharmos a pesquisa e a pós-graduação, nós temos que os referenciais estão mais ou menos alinhados com o que é feito no exterior. Então, nós temos, né, bons referenciais internacionais. A graduação, no meu entendimento, está desconectada com o que o mundo está fazendo. Nós temos uma estrutura curricular muito ultrapassada, e ela está mais adaptada ao que era feito em meados do século passado, né? Nós insistimos ainda no processo de formação que é completamente incompatível com o que é feito hoje no mundo. E um dos grandes aprendizados dos alunos que saíram do Ciências Sem Fronteiras foi de constatar que os seus colegas passam de 8 a 12 horas por semana dentro de sala de aula, enquanto que aqui no Brasil nós temos alunos ficando 30, 35 horas ouvindo o professor. Então, é uma estrutura completamente incompatível com o que está sendo feito hoje no mundo. Nós temos um processo de massificação da informação, quer dizer, os alunos ficam sentados recebendo uma quantidade de aulas incompatível hoje com os sistemas de informação disponíveis, né? É um tipo de aprendizado que não estimula a criatividade. Então, a gente precisa realmente repensar, em termos de graduação, como é que a gente pode ajustar. E, no meu entendimento, quer dizer, o grande gargalo que nós temos na graduação do país é exatamente isso, a falta de referenciais internacionais. Nós precisamos interagir mais com... Por isso que é importante esse processo de internacionalização, que vai impactar, sobretudo, a graduação, porque eu vejo que a pós e a pesquisa, nós já estamos mais ou menos alinhados com o que o mundo tem feito, né? E no caso das parcerias, elas só vão sobreviver se elas forem benéficas aos parceiros, né? Não há possibilidade de uma parceria assimétrica, ela terá, evidentemente, uma sobrevida pequena. E uma proposta que vem sendo discutida no MEC, e o professor Jorge tem dedicado bastante seu tempo em termos de entendimento e discussão, seria um processo de internacionalização das universidades brasileiras, né? Como a gente poderia fazer para que essas universidades se tornassem de classe mundial? Então, nós temos que alguns desafios, nós temos que realmente internacionalizar o ensino e a pesquisa, né? Ajustar a nossa estrutura curricular de maneira a reduzir a quantidade de atividades informativas e trocar isso por aumentar a parte das atividades formativas, né? Esse é um aspecto importantíssimo. Nós temos que ter um currículo internacional, né? A oferta de cursos regulares, sobretudo em inglês, esse esses são os grandes gargalos que nós temos. A maioria do nosso alunado é monoglota, tem dificuldade de se expressar e se comunicar em outra língua. Então, nós precisamos absolutamente de investimento muito forte nessa área, porque a perspectiva nos próximos anos é de que realmente nós temos salas múltiplas com alunos de diferentes países tendo a mesma aula no seu computador. Nós precisamos também cada vez mais consolidar a parceria internacional. Já mostrei alguns exemplos, alguns desafios que nós temos, né? Esse processo de mobilidade docente e discente é fundamental, nos dois sentidos. Nós precisamos enviar os nossos alunos, os nossos pesquisadores, professores, e também recebê-los aqui no país, de maneira a realmente ter um quadro de convergência muito grande. Precisamos cada vez mais atrair estudantes e pesquisadores para o Brasil, e nesse caso, evidentemente, ligado a isso, nós precisamos de ter uma infraestrutura, né? E também, se possível, envolvimento com o setor industrial a partir da oferta de Estado. Hoje, esse é um estudo que o professor Jorge já mostrou, quais universidades e como é que a gente poderia lidar com essa internacionalização. Então, ele fez um estudo baseado nos programas de pós-graduação e ele listou os programas de pós-graduação em termos de programas 6 e 7, que são os programas de padrão internacional, que hoje representa aí por volta de 10 a 11% do número total de programas de pós-graduação no Brasil, da ordem de quase 4 mil programas. Então, nós temos cerca de 11% entre 6 e 7. Listados, aqui nós temos, então, o número de as instituições, a UFMG está bem colocada, e a proporção desses programas 6 e 7 no quantitativo. Então, a pós-graduação já é um elemento importante para a internacionalização da universidade. Como eu falei, não adianta internacionalizar tudo ao mesmo tempo, não vai levar nenhum, tem que definir prioridade, e um crivo já importante seria a partir da pós-graduação. Quando a gente compara essa classificação que foi feita em número de programas de pós-graduação com essa classificação que é do ranking universitário da Folha de São Paulo, nós observamos que a UFMG está em segundo lugar, que deve estar no top do grupo, e se nós olharmos essas 20 instituições aqui, nós temos quase 90% que estão presentes tanto na pós-graduação quanto na graduação. O que isso mostra? A pós-graduação dá visibilidade e a pós-graduação qualifica a graduação. Nós fizemos uma classificação da pós-graduação, pequenas alterações, mas nós vamos ter o mesmo grupo de universidade. Estou mostrando realmente que a pós-graduação é um importantíssimo elemento de qualificação da universidade, né? Então, assim, dois aspectos que queria encerrar a apresentação falando isso. Quer dizer, se nós pensarmos em internacionalizar as nossas instituições, nós temos essa experiência da pós-graduação, a partir dos programas já melhor avaliados, que já têm um grau de internacionalização maior, e também, no caso da graduação, a partir da experiência de cada instituição, por exemplo, dentro do programa Ciências Sem Fronteiras. Eu, então, encerro essa apresentação nesse momento, agradeço muito a atenção de vocês, e se houver depois tempo oportuno, estou à disposição, vou ficar o dia aqui, posso discutir com os senhores. Muito obrigado.
Convidamos as autoridades a retornarem a seus lugares na mesa de abertura. Com a palavra, o magnífico reitor da UFMG, professor Jaime Arturo Ramires, para a sua mensagem final.
Eu gostaria, inicialmente, de agradecer não só a vinda, tanto do professor Evaldo, mas também do professor Márcio, com as palavras que nos trouxeram. Primeiro, a Tapeli, que sabemos que está o professor Evaldo, uma âncora para nós, um parceiro incondicional, um cientista na alcance que temos no início de uma gestão e temos certeza que terá o apoio não apenas da UFMG, mas de todas as instituições que desenvolvem ensino de qualidade e pesquisa de ponta no nosso estado. Ao Márcio, a palestra com dados muito interessantes, eu creio, vão nos ajudar a discutir o tema ao longo do dia, também o nosso agradecimento à CAPES, uma parceira internacional muito importante, não apenas do ponto de vista do financiamento, mas, sobretudo, podemos também fazer as provocações necessárias e nos tirar do local de conforto, que às vezes nos é muito peculiar. Eu gostaria de ressaltar a nossa programação. Após essa mesa de abertura, nós teremos uma palestra, que será proferida pelo professor David Schallenberg. Muito bem-vindo. Welcome to our institution and thank you for sharing your time with us. E essa mesa vai ser presidida pela professora Sandra e após a apresentação do professor Schallenberg, nós teremos um espaço para alguma discussão, algum debate. Após a apresentação do professor Schallenberg, nós teremos a apresentação da delegação russa, a quem agradeço também pela vinda ao UFMG, pela presença e por compartilhar conosco a experiência que a Rússia tem desenvolvido com o intuito de avançar não apenas as suas instituições de pós-graduação, de ensino, de pesquisa, mas, sobretudo, nas relações com os outros países. A parte da tarde, após o almoço, nós teremos a perspectiva das agências internacionais, em que teremos a participação de 3 agências importantes, com as quais países do Brasil já tem alguma tradição, com a Alemanha, com o Reino Unido e com a França. Agradeço de antemão a diretora-geral do DAD do Brasil, a doutora Martina Schultz, o doutor Jean-Paul Pedro do Conselho de Cooperação e Ação Cultural da Embaixada Francesa, e o doutor Cláudio dos Anjos, pelo Conselho Britânico. Após o intervalo do café, nós teremos a visão das associações institucionais, encerrando a atividade do dia, o doutor Vitor Amaral, vice-presidente da POBAI, e Márcio Barbosa, diretor do Serviços. Amanhã é um dia de atividades exclusivamente na parte da manhã, de uma importância muito capital para nós, que estamos com a responsabilidade de conduzir a instituição. Como o Márcio colocou, a nossa tradição de pesquisa e pós-graduação é muito recente. A UFMG, em 2 anos, vai completar 90 anos. A pós-graduação caminha para pouco mais de 50 anos. E a diretoria de Relações Internacionais, 20 anos. Então, nesse contexto, nós temos a compreensão que muitas iniciativas, elas partem do plano individual. Isso é natural no processo de internacionalização, de cooperação, mas nós gostaríamos muito de ouvir a nossa comunidade qual a parte administrativa que mais apoio para que, de forma efetiva, nós tenhamos condições de avançar ainda mais no processo de internacionalização da nossa pós-graduação, da nossa pesquisa, sobretudo. Temos, como é sabido, tanto grupos de pesquisa quanto programas de pós-graduação consolidados, de referência nacional e internacional em todas as áreas de produção. A UFMG se destaca por essa questão. Se olharmos tanto a área de humanidades, quanto a área de sociais aplicadas, linguística, letras e artes, engenharia, ciências biológicas, ciências agrárias, ciências exatas e da terra, em todas as áreas do conhecimento que são avaliadas hoje por nossa agência, pela CAPES, a UFMG tem cursos 6 e 7, cursos 5 também que se destacam no cenário nacional. Isto posto, nos colocam duas questões. Primeiro, a responsabilidade de elevar cada vez mais esse patamar. Esse é o nosso papel enquanto instituição pública. Segundo, a partir de um diagnóstico colocado, como avançar no plano da internacionalização conjuntamente com os nossos programas de pós-graduação e os nossos grupos de pesquisa. Quais questões devemos, de fato, visto que tanto o tempo quanto os recursos financeiros eles são finitos, elencar como sendo prioritários e aí colocarmos a nossa energia, o nosso tempo para avançar nessas questões. Gostaria de colocar isso como sendo algo que nós, da administração central, gostaríamos de ouvir da nossa comunidade, como algo importante para nós de ter como resultado ao final deste encontro até amanhã. A produção do conhecimento, que é a difusão do conhecimento para nós, inovador, ela é imprescindível. E a cooperação com os pares, sejam docentes, seja a cooperação com o intercâmbio de alunos e docentes, tanto em nível nacional quanto em nível internacional, para a concepção e desenvolvimento, seja de projetos sociais, tecnológicos, de qualquer natureza, essa colaboração, ela sempre deve ser colocada como pertencente no local mais privilegiado do ethos de qualquer instituição de ensino superior que queira ter o nome de universidade. Este é o valor para nós deste encontro, é a mensagem e a compreensão que Sandra e eu queremos trazer da importância do papel estratégico que isso representa para a nossa instituição. A nossa presença aqui, ela não tem apenas o papel formal, ela tem o papel do nosso compromisso de que esta é uma área que compreendemos, ela é estratégica e, como tal, deve ser tratada como prioritária na nossa gestão. Então, nesse sentido, eu quero deixar claro que, além dos países com os quais já temos a tradição de ter uma cooperação, seja por laços históricos, seja por quaisquer razões, países esses com os quais reconhecemos têm mais tradição do que nós e, portanto, temos que ser humildes e aprender com eles. Mas, da mesma maneira, colocar que é papel também da nossa instituição reconhecer que tem outros países que ainda não têm a nossa tradição e não têm ainda a nossa qualidade, e com os quais nós também devemos manter relações, porque este também é um papel de uma instituição de ensino superior público de um país como o nosso. Refiro-me especificamente a países da América Latina e países da África, e em quaisquer sentido, seja com os países mais desenvolvidos do que nós, com os quais temos que aprender, ou com aqueles em que podemos compartilhar e talvez ensinar um pouco, em quaisquer que sejam as direções, sempre com sentido de reciprocidade, ou seja, no sentido de mão dupla. Temos que ter este ideal nas relações universitárias, sobretudo para que o nosso país possa cada vez mais ter o apoio das suas instituições como um celeiro nas relações comerciais, nas relações sociais e, sobretudo, nas relações diplomáticas. Então, com essas palavras, eu gostaria de deixar essa mensagem como sendo a mensagem que a administração central entende este encontro, este início de um ciclo de seminários, neste caso, a pós-graduação em pauta. Encerrar essa sessão de leitura, agradecer mais uma vez ao Rodrigo e ao Fábio pela organização do evento, a Prefeitura de Pós-Graduação e a Diretoria de Relações Internacionais, e desejar um ótimo trabalho a todos e que tenhamos sucesso no nosso evento e possamos dar aquele salto que cabe agora ao UFMG dar do ponto de vista da pós-graduação e das relações internacionais com outras instituições e com outros países. Muito obrigado. Está encerrada a sessão de abertura. Passo, então, agora a condução da professora Sandra para a segunda parte, que é a palestra do professor Xavier.
Convidamos novamente as autoridades que compõem a mesa a ocuparem seus lugares reservados no auditório, com exceção da professora Sandra Regina Goulart Almeida, que coordenará a próxima atividade.
Então, tudo bem.
Bom dia a todos e a todas. Nós passamos agora a segunda parte da atividade da manhã de hoje, com a palestra do professor Xavier. Eu gostaria de acusar, primeiramente, a presença do reitor da Universidade de Santo Tomé e Príncipe, professor Peregrino Cacareiro da Costa, prazer de recebê-lo aqui, e também o honorário da França, obrigada pela presença de todos os professores. Ele é reconhecido internacionalmente como especialista no campo de educação internacional, possui mestrado em administração e desenvolvimento organizacional pelo Stanford University, doutorado pelo Fielding Institute em Sistemas Humanos e Organizacionais. É atualmente professor de educação internacional no SIT Graduate Institute, que é o Instituto de pós-graduação, com ênfase justamente na educação internacional, desenvolvimento sustentável e administração territorial. Antes de assumir essa posição, atuou durante 4 anos como diretor do Estudos Europeus de Desenvolvimento Médico da instituição. Tem certificação como Fulbright Specialist para estudos relacionados à internacionalização do ensino superior, atuando também junto a organismos internacionais profissionais como NAPSE e forma Education Abroad. Tem se dedicado especialmente a estudos sobre comunicação intercultural em ambientes de pesquisa, liderança ética, consciência multicultural, elaboração e coordenação de programas de internacionalização do ensino superior na Europa, na Ásia e também na América Latina. Tem vários artigos publicados sobre o tema e está atualmente trabalhando em um livro titulado Developing Intercultural Fluency. O tema da palestra do professor Xavier de hoje é justamente o tema que cobre esse seminário, a internacionalização do ensino superior com foco na pós-graduação. Eu convido então o professor Xavier para subir ao palco.
Bom dia a todos e todas. É com muito prazer que estou aqui, mas vou continuar em inglês. First, I want to thank UFMG for the kind invitation to be here. It is a great pleasure to be talking about this important topic. This is one reason why I'm speaking in English. I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak in Portuguese, but I think perhaps you'll understand my English better than my Portuguese. I have, as a way of introduction, I have 3 questions that I would like to ask you. I'm assuming that almost everybody here is from UFMG except for the invited persons, but how many people are from UFMG? And from other institutions and other places? Wonderful. Terrific. How many people in this room are teachers, docentes? Oh, wonderful. How many people have primarily administrative roles? Students? I love having students here. Wonderful. And this, just to get a sense of your academic areas, because this will help me in my examples, how many are from the Ciencias Agrarias? Okay. Ciências Biológicas, Ciências da Saúde, Ciências Exatas e da Terra, Ciências Humanas, Ciências Sociais Aplicadas, Engenharias, Linguística, Letras e Artes. Have I missed anybody? I am an interdisciplinary social scientist. I come from that perspective, but some of my best friends are scientists. So, a little bit about myself. I'm pleased to be here because I am passionate about Brazil. I have been living and traveling here since 2010. While I live in the States now, I frequently come to Brazil. And I work with institutions of higher education around the country and in the United States. I've learned a great deal since I've been here. And I continue learning. So I offer these insights, these perspectives and ideas with the humility of someone who does not know your situation as you do. So these are just my own observations. I've been working in the field of international education since 1975. Though my primary experience of it came as a teenager living in Lima, Peru. I've studied, traveled, worked throughout my life, and have come to realize the importance of intercultural competence in a world that is increasingly interconnected. Our agenda for this time together is to explore some concrete and often low-cost strategies or steps you can take to internationalize at home. Fabio has spoken on his interview and in other places about the importance of a culture of internationalization. And part of that has to do, a big part of that has to do with what happened here in Minas Gerais. We'll do this by first revisiting the concept of internationalization at home. I'll talk about some strategies and a little bit about implementation. I have asked that I have a handout to be distributed, which is an action plan, which is, I think, a way for people to take notes about what is important to them and what they want to do. I also have a manual of strategies and examples, which is constantly updated, but it's available on this website here. The website is also listed on your action plan. It gives more specific examples from Brazil and elsewhere of the kind of strategies that I will be talking about today. So, internationalization at home, and this is why. Now, UFMG is in a very special place because they have more mobility, more exchange than many universities in Brazil, and most universities in Brazil. But the UNESCO statistics show that 97% of Brazilian students do not leave Brazil during their studies. They do not study outside of Brazil. Though the numbers have increased somewhat through programs like Science Without Borders. We tend to think of internationalization as exchange and mobility, but that is just the tip of the iceberg here. That internationalization at home includes much more. So I think it's important to note that inter-exchange, mobility help us in internationalization at home. They are very important pillars. But for those students who cannot leave the country, there are many other strategies, and we'll talk about these as we go along. There are many ways to institutional internationalization, many roads to get there, and every institution has to choose the path that makes sense for it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. What I'm talking about today is a sense of comprehensive internationalization, creating, as Professor Fabio has said, a culture of internationalization. And that requires an awareness, an understanding, and a commitment that is different than just mobility and exchange. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the strategies, but before I do, I want to talk about what I call institutional readiness. I am pleased to follow Professor Marcio's talk because this actually builds on some of the comments that you made, so thank you. I have worked with a number of institutions, and I use a number of different indicators and tools as a way of understanding where an institution is in its movement towards comprehensive internationalization. These are only 3 of the tools that I use, and I don't use them in any particular order. It depends on the institution and the context, and sometimes I'm using all of them at the same time. So the first one that I'll talk about is the stakeholder analysis. And in the stakeholder analysis, I try to identify who has power and influence and who supports my ideas. In this case, about internationalization at home. So for me, the top left-hand box, it says meet their needs, are people who have great power, but may not yet be converted to my ideas. And so I want to meet their needs, I want to engage with them, and I want to convince them of the value of my ideas. And then they become key players. On the bottom are those who have little power and little interest, who are called least important in this. And I'll keep them informed. I'll hope they'll be converted, but I'll keep them informed to move them over to the right-hand box. And then those are the people that I will show consideration to, that I will consult with, and I will promote with. I hope they will promote goodwill. Some of the stakeholders I would consider in most situations include the students, the professors, the international office, the co-gestores, the community and potential employers. Each of these groups has a particular stake in the education of students. And sometimes there are significant differences even within these groups. Professors of language, for example, might have a very different understanding than professors of statistics or chemistry. I know of rectors who are profoundly supportive of internationalization, and I know of others who have yet to be convinced. The second tool that I use is a change typology. And what it communicates and what it makes me think about is how deep and how pervasive any change activity might be. So I might say that the change that I want to create cannot be pervasive because there's some parts of the institution that are not quite there yet. But there's some that are very strong, and I can, for a variety of reasons, work with that. So I might do a deep, I might do an isolated, I might do a transformational kind of change. And the last is the SWOT analysis. I prefer the Portuguese Brazilian FOFA. I think it's a wonderful, it's wonderful to the ears. This is one place where Professor Marcio's comments really fit very well. A SWOT analysis brings together information on internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats. In one school in which I worked, their location was a great opportunity because there were many conferences and international organizations there, and there was much international activity. On the other hand, there was a strong weakness in that they had little support from the rector and one of the key pro-rectors. And they were hopeful for the next election. In another situation, there was an unstable internet. So that is challenging. Or there were technicians there were not enough technicians to support the technological work. But in both of these, the teachers were passionately committed to improve their teaching and internationalize their courses, a crucial strength. Many of the points that Professor Marcio brought up about the challenges that Brazil is facing now certainly fit in here in terms of the external environment, but also do the opportunities. So let's talk about some of those opportunities. In this conversation, I'm going to be talking about some strategies and some examples. I'm also going to be talking about some research that some colleagues and I have done with professors here in Brazil on the strategies they use. And they've been professors at large federal institutions around the country. So I'm going to be talking first about curricular internationalization, things that go on in the class itself. The first strategy is the use of readings and materials, cases, examples from outside of Brazil, and I would say, and I certainly encourage teachers in the U.S., non-Occidental, non-Western readings as well. I love this example, and it's a very simple example. It's a professor of engineering that asked his students to design a bridge for a rural community in Kenya. And he said, I want you to use materials that are available there. I want you to consider the culture, the values, the resources that might be available there. And so they were learning not only about engineering and structure, construction of bridges, but they were learning about culture. In another example, which I don't have illustrated here, came from a professor of statistics. We assigned a country to each student. Each student was to find the rate of child mortality. And in doing so, was able to, they brought the information to the classroom, and then they did statistical calculations based on regions, based on globally with respect to certain kinds of divisions and groupings. They learned statistics, but they learned about other parts of the world at the same time. There are many other examples. In Brazil, in my research, 68% of the people, the professors, that we surveyed use some type of material from outside. They use data and results from research that is global. They use videos, often with subtitles in Portuguese, from sites like TED Talks, YouTube, the Khan Academy, and other professional sites. They use graphics, images, slides from other countries and cultures. They, of course, use professional articles, sometimes saying that these are optional for students if they're in English or another language, in case the students don't speak that language, but they find them very helpful, and then, of course, they share their own experiences. Here is one example from a graduate professor at a federal university. By graduate, of course, I'm using the U.S. American definition, so pós-graduação. While most students, or many students, do not speak English or other languages and may be resistant to some of these materials, teachers have provided translations, or they made the reading of the material optional. They've also sought to overcome the resistance by stating how important fluency in another language is, and as these kinds of assignments and activities become more common, the resistance diminishes. This is why it is so important to work together throughout the institution, and why this needs to be part of a culture of internationalization. Let's look at another strategy. The use of Skype and social media to link students, classes, experts, and professors around the world. Skype is free, of course, but a working internet connection is always important. This strategy takes on many forms. Here's one example. This is Fairleigh Dickinson University in the US. They consider their international faculty key to their learning in all of their academic areas. So they contract with professors from around the world to present a lecture, a course, a module, a guest speaking engagement, and that happens in almost all of their courses. Here's another example on a very different level, and this is South African students taking Khan Academy courses. Of course, this is not pós-graduação. It's important to mention this is very similar in some ways to the strategy we mentioned before about using materials from outside of your home country. These strategies overlap, and they need to work together. I can give you some other examples, many more are in the manual. And you can feel free to explore those if you want to download it. One is an example of graduate students in Japan and the United Arab Emirates who work together on a shared course in intercultural communication, together in student groups. Again, this was just part of the internationalization of their curriculum. In Brazil, in the research that I did, and it did not include UFMG, but 21% of faculty use some form of this. Here are some of the examples they employed this strategy. At a federal institute with which I worked, an engineering professor uses Skype to bring in a guest presentation of a Brazilian engineer who lives in Texas in the United States. So he understands the Brazilian context and the North American context. And because the guest speaks Portuguese, the students can more easily understand and are more welcome. In a similar vein, I have spoken in classes in Brazil and elsewhere through Skype. And I've had Brazilians and others speak in my classes, either directly via Skype or via video recorded, a video that was recorded beforehand and shown in class. Most respondents in this particular study used Skype to communicate with colleagues in other countries about shared research or professional interests. Few actually used it in their classes. Some have indicated that this is because the internet is precarious in their situation. And that requires, of course, a technological fix. Perhaps by pre-recording lectures and presentations when there is a strong connection, or asking the presenter to record a presentation at home and then send it along or post it. Of course, in that situation, you don't have the possibility of debate and discussion. Here are some comments. See someone using Facebook for sharing materials, and another for research and dissertation defense. A third strategy is to integrate students with international experience in your classes in profound and important ways. When I say students with international experience, it could be those who have returned from studying abroad. It could be international students who are resident at the university. It could be just students who have strong international experience. I had a student, for example, in a graduate class on organizational behavior and on leadership, who's from the Ivory Coast. And he explained how the Western models of leadership just did not fit the situation in the Ivory Coast. That was such an important lesson for me and for the other students, to know that there were limitations to the materials that they were reading and that they had been exposed to. In another example, cited in the manual, again, which you can download if you'd like, Japanese students visited medical classes to talk about medical practices in their home country. Similarly, fluent speakers of a foreign language can function as tutors to students learning that language. There are lots of resources available professionally, and there are links in the manual to these. In Brazil, the average use of this, of international students, was about 30%. It ranged, and I put the range in here because the range was very large, from 23 to 63%. Many said they just didn't have the experience of having students with international experience in the classes. But those who did certainly invited students in, and it was simply, it could have been as easy as sharing their experience, it could be facilitating research or project in class, providing tutoring to others, it could have been via Skype. I particularly like this quote because it shows the value. A fourth approach is to build a community in the classes through internships and visits to internationally focused organizations. Of course, internships are important ways of learning in many of the areas that you represent. And so by putting students into organizations with international connections, they learn directly how important it is to have intercultural and international competence. You can't just put them into an international organization. They need to be in places and in functions where they have international connections. Of course, here are some of the examples. In Brazil, obviously, there are many, many, many more. It is important to facilitate the learning, not just to put them in the organization. In some organizations, in some institutions, they create a global certificate, which is a wonderful way to acknowledge students who have done more work on internationalizing their own learning. This is done in universities throughout the world. They draw on, they give points to, they give credit to students who have done language study, participated in certain globally focused classes, have been active in international groups or organizations, have done international internships, do peer mentoring, intercultural peer mentoring, guided journaling and reflection, writing articles that are international in focus, attending key lectures and events, doing assignments with global focus and key courses. Many activities together. The students earn points and they gain the certificate. Here's one example. In Australia, there are many, many, many others, again, listed in the manual. So those are the strategies that I think are most essential in class. But there are other strategies which happen beyond the classroom and involve the classroom as well. And I will just cite a few of these. One is, and again, this could happen inside the classroom or outside, the integration of talks that are given by visiting professionals from outside of the country. This can happen in many different ways. There may be very many reasons why a potential lecturer might be in the area. They might be here at conferences, including, you'll see this one here. The university might invite them for roundtables on research or areas of common interest. They might just be traveling through. In the research, again, there was a widespread 22 to 42% of the professors in the various 7 or 8 institutions that were part of the research use this. Of course, this depends on location. Everybody wants to come to Belo Horizonte, so I don't think it would be a problem here. But it depends on the location. This quote, I think, captures the essence of the strategy. Another strategy outside of the class, and this does not affect only pós-graduação, but also undergraduate graduação, are cultural events. Again, part of creating that larger culture of internationalization at the institute. There are many, many examples of this. I particularly love the ones of cooking, but video, art, cinema, again, many listed in the manual, many are student-driven. And as it was in one Brazilian university I visited, where the international students decided they were going to create international food and sell it to students and professors. These are also, by the way, wonderful opportunities for bringing in international visiting professionals. There are many other opportunities discussed in the manual. I understand that UFMG has a residence program, which is wonderful. It seems to be rare in Brazilian universities, but it's a wonderful creating opportunities for Brazilian and international students to be together, creating opportunities for speaking other languages. I lived in a residence in mine, a graduate school where you could only speak a language other than English once you were inside the walls of that residence. Similarly, in many universities, there are centers for language practice. So, for example, this diagram in Japanese near the bottom there comes from what's called the EQ in a Japanese university. When you go into those rooms, you drink U.S. and British drinks, you speak English, you have tutoring available. It's fun, but it also creates an opportunity to reinforce the learning. And of course, student clubs. I think it's important to note that all of these strategies have more power to them when they're done collaboratively throughout the institution. So, for example, an institution might say, we're going to focus on the Middle East, and the library does an exhibit of its resources on the Middle East. We bring in guest speakers from the Middle East. We do other events. The Middle Eastern students make presentations. There are Middle Eastern focus in the classes. And by reinforcing each other's activity, the message becomes even stronger. I want to underscore here that all of these are examples of strategies, but they have to work together. If you're to create a culture of internationalization in graduate work here at UFMG, it's important that you're doing all of these, not some of these. Do as many as you can and reinforce them. They should reinforce each other. So you are a long way from beginning. You've been doing this for a long time. So I just want to underscore that you may find that there are people that you have allies, programs, people who are doing research already, people that already have connections, young professors, areas that have a lot of interest, where internationalization at home is relatively simple, and you can start there, particularly in some of the areas that you mentioned, if you have not yet gone as far as you would like to go. There are workshops, lots of activities that people can do. I think that in many situations there are workshops and peer mentoring and of course you have many research groups that do international work. I want to underscore this particular statistic, 95%. I asked the people that answered the survey, how many of you want training in how to internationalize your classes? 95% said they wanted that training and that they would participate in that training if it were offered. This is important, and this is something that has profound value and impact on your students. Some of the comments that were made by respondents to the survey. Let's not forget our partnerships. Our partnerships are wonderful sources of information and professors that can teach at a distance, like in the Fairleigh Dickinson example, sources of international materials, speakers on campus, research collaborators. I like this one, recipes for international meals, contact for growing our professional world, and of course, so how do you do this? And this is where that action plan comes back into action. You establish your goals. We're going to internationalize every course in this program. You establish your evidence. How will you know that students have developed that competence? You offer opportunities. You do the work, you do the activities, you evaluate the learning, and you use the results. So for example, if you're a professor, you're asking yourself, what are the students' needs? What are your resources? Who are your allies? And then you start, maybe with a module, maybe with an approach. How you'll weave it into your course, or will you make it pervasive throughout the course or a separate module, and what strategies are most accessible and implementable. And then you assess it and improve it. If you're in an administrative role and you're helping faculty do this work, then your questions are very similar, but slightly different. So what are the needs of the students and the professors? What are the resources? What are your leverage points? When you're looking at a program as a whole, where are the places where you can have the most impact? Then you decide where's the starting group, and your approach, how you're going to train them, develop them, and again, you assess it and improve it. I think there's lots of, to me, I'm passionate about this. There are lots of important points here. I think the two most important points are that an institution cannot consider itself internationalized without a profoundly internationalized curriculum. And internationalization has to fit the students and the university. Of course, that requires being a priority of the institution, having the support, having professional staff who can help you with this, and having human and financial resources. That may be considered a lot to some people, but if you don't go down these roads, you find that there's a greater and greater gap. And students end up being poorly prepared for the 21st century. Thank you.
Obrigada, gostaria de agradecer ao professor Chalibert pela palestra, também por vir aqui para fazer essa abertura do evento. Muito interessante a sua análise dos desafios que nós temos para as nossas instituições no campo da internacionalização e também a apresentação dessas estratégias que para nós são muito relevantes. Antes de abrir o debate, eu gostaria apenas de fazer uma pequena intervenção com relação à sua reflexão sobre esse conceito de internacionalização que para nós é tão caro. Eu gostei muito da maneira como o senhor apresentou a questão da internacionalização, não apenas como um objeto em si a ser alcançado, mas também como todo um processo institucional que tem a ver com conhecimento entre culturas diferentes, independente da área do conhecimento, né? E que isso se faz principalmente através de uma cooperação entre eles. Esse conceito de internacionalização ele é instrumental em termos de uma cooperação internacional. Eu gostaria que o senhor falasse um pouquinho mais sobre esse conceito específico que o senhor desenvolveu na sua palestra. Not only as a strategy, but a way of intercultural exchange and cooperation among many institutions.
I have, by here you mean in Brazil? For many, many years, I've worked in with exchange and mobility. That is beginning with my first experiences as a child and then as a professional. And what I began to realize as I worked with institutions around the world was that there were many, many more students who stayed at home and didn't have the opportunities of exchange. As much as I believe in exchange as a transformational experience, many students didn't have access to that. And so I started talking to people in institutions around the world about how do they serve those students who don't leave. At the same time, there was new literature coming out on comprehensive internationalization. And at that point, the discussion was that internationalization is not something that happens only in one part of the institution. But indeed, it needs to be part of the culture of the institution from the very top to the very bottom. It needs to be part of everything that the institution does. So it was that literature and my experience that came together to come to this place.
Thank you very much. Eu abro então para discussão, perguntas. Podem ser feitas em português, em inglês.
Good morning. Thank you for your talk, very interesting. My name is Nicholas. I represent another federal university of Brazil, and I want to come back to your idea of developing networking and Skype and Facebook in the classes. This raises for us a very interesting issue and question, which is how much do we show about ourselves, about our culture, about our academic contexts when we interact with foreign contexts. We can, of course, import many of the readings from typically English-speaking countries, but then it's up to us to also create and propose and expose and show our culture, our readings, what we teach, what we do, our research. And it may seem a paradox, but sometimes it is local parts, this will to exhibit the freedom which may be difficult for some professors and for some students. So I wanted your experience in this issue of promoting your own culture when you open to the world.
It's a wonderful comment and question. And we live in a world that is both local and global, or global. And that is part of our experience as human beings, as professionals, as professors, and as students. And so I think we are living that paradox. We should be living that paradox all the time. And so yes, we promote our own culture, but we also need to, I believe, show profound respect for other cultures and other understandings and other ways of being in the world. And so for me, it's about doing both at the same time. And it's about understanding that our students may be here in Belo Horizonte, but they're also linked to the global world. And so there are many things that I might be proud of from my own culture, but the last thing I'm going to do is to say that my own culture is the best culture, because I want to create a world where we respect others. And so I build that into everything that I do. I try. I'm not always successful. I don't know if that answers your question.
Hi, Professor. Thank you very much for your lecture. My name is Aline. I'm a PhD student here at the UFMG, and at the same time, I'm currently working for the state government of New Zealand. So I would like to know, in what extent has the European Union been responsible for or has contributed for the internationalization of its universities? And what kind of institutional or what kind of phenomenon could have a similar role in Brazil and in Latin America in general?
It's interesting that you asked that question, because tonight I am flying to Cuiabá, where on Saturday I'm co-presenting with a Dutch gentleman on internationalization at home, who has done a lot of research on how the European Union addresses comprehensive internationalization. And I think I will know more. I would be better able to answer your question after that presentation. It's interesting, in talking with him, while there is great movement around Europe, very often students will actually stay for their studies at home, and they'll travel in their leisure time. Or if you happen to live in the Netherlands or Belgium, for example, you may go to France or Germany for dinner or your weekend, but not always study. But of course, we're talking about an environment that is much more internationalized in smaller spaces. It's not like Brazil, it's not like the United States. I think Brazil has incredible potential in internationalizing. It's a country that has so much to share with the world. And the world has so much to learn from Brazil. And there is a great deal of interest in Brazil. I think the biggest challenge, and it was mentioned earlier, is that there aren't that many people outside of the Lusophone part of the world that speak Portuguese. And, but there is a profound interest in Brazil, and I think the institutions of the institutions of higher education in Brazil can do so much more. And I understand that there are challenges, as Professor Marcio and others have said. There are incredible challenges, but there's so much potential. I have ideas, but I really think that it is for Brazilians to decide those ideas, the ones that fit their context.
Thank you for our speech. It was very interesting.
Thank you for your speech. I'm a worker here at UFMG. I'd like to ask you to talk about a little bit more about the training that the staff of the institute can receive to prepare these institutes.
I have a training design which I've shared, and I'd be glad to share with you. It depends on what the role is of the individual. So administrative staff might have a different training, will have a different training than professors teaching their courses. But as part of the training, what I do is I share strategies like this. And then I have people develop an action plan, more complicated than the one I distributed. And to make specific goals that they will do as part of that. And then they come back in 3 months and report on what they've been able to do. And we talk about places where they can get support to do that. And then they come back in 6 months and a year and report again. And through that constant training, through applying ideas like these ones to your own particular situation, you get the support, and you get the practice, and you get a group of colleagues that work with you. And again, I have a training design I'm happy to share with you or with Professor Coffey or
Professor, a internacionalização está muito associada ou traz consigo os rankings universitários. Gostaria que você falasse um pouco, porque há um receio de uma visão muito acrítica, pouco crítica aos rankings dentro do sistema.
I am not a fan of rankings. And I say that knowing that UFMG ranks very high. But I like to focus on the level of the individual student. So if I have a doctoral student who wants to study outside of my country, it's often not the best decision to go to the school that is ranked the highest, because that might not be the school that fits the particular interests of the student. My problem with rankings is that the formulas, the methods that they use are not inclusive of the needs of all kinds of students and the weights that they give to certain things. So it may be that a Brazilian student who wants to study in my country, in the US, should go to a tiny school in Kansas and not to Harvard, and might get a better education at that tiny school in Kansas because of individual professors or individual areas of interest. So I respect rankings, but I also have concern.
name is Magno. I'm from a city close here called Ouro. I hope we can have time to discuss the building things. And I have two questions. The first one, your own opinion about the science without borders as American. And another question is how to attract, how to convince Americans to study in a Brazilian institution.
Let me first say that I would love to visit Ouro Preto. I've heard so many wonderful things about it. So, in the future. Science without borders. My experience, let me just give a little context. I was asked by Brazilian and American, US American international organizations to do research on the relationship between Brazilian and US American international offices. What were the challenges and what were the strengths? And it was a very interesting process, but it influenced my thinking about science without borders. I think that many of the students who are participating in Science Without Borders have had wonderful experiences and learned a great deal, and it's been an amazing opportunity for them. I think that there have been challenges, often administrative challenges, whether it's accepting credits back here or the student finding the right institution abroad, outside of Brazil. I want to give you an example of that. There was a student of medicine who went to a university in the United States. Again, this is undergraduate. In the United States, we don't teach medicine at the undergraduate level. It is only graduate. And it was really difficult for that person to take courses that contributed to in this case, his learning. When you talk to international officers in the United States, they will talk about the wonderful spirit and energy of Brazilian students. I think Brazilian students are among their favorite students. They contribute to the culture of the institution. They have often have a positive, optimistic, fun kind of spirit to them, and they bring interesting background reading to understanding. So I think if we could figure out how to solve the administrative problems, if we could figure out how to make sure that students had the absolute best choice of institutions to travel to, if the institutions, the host institutions, the home institutions of the students have sometimes complained that they have not had as much say in where the students have gone. If we can solve some of those administrative problems, I think it could be even stronger. But I think it has there are many, many success stories in Science Without Borders. I forgot the other part of your question. Oh, how to attract more students. Of course, language is an issue. U.S. American students are famous for not speaking other languages. I think it's very sad. I think it's a disadvantage that English is the lingua franca of the world these days. I hope it changes to Chinese or some other language so that Americans speak Portuguese. But then the Brazilians won't have to learn. So I think developing programs in English are one way of doing it. Another way, and I speak from a U.S. American perspective, where many of our students study Spanish, is to do what some institutions have done by having a 3-week or a month crash course in Portuguese for Spanish speakers when they arrive. And then they can enter into the classroom more easily. Because everybody wants to come to Brazil. Or should.
So there is your speech. Thank you very much. I would like to comment about the user experience, like a student. So when you arrive to university, what should be the desirable user experience in university in order to support high quality of education? And what should be the wish list of the students to go to career, what they expect? Could you comment on this both?
Sure. I'll make a couple comments. One is that I believe that the learning of an international student at, let's say, UFMG or any institution is enhanced, is improved when it is facilitated by intercultural work. I think that while you can drop someone into a course or a program, it's better if you help them learn about the culture and if you help them become deeply appreciative of the culture. So having courses, seminars, opportunities where they can learn about the culture of Brazil, of Minas, of UFMG, where they acquire like lenses for understanding. For example, let me give you an example outside of your question, but it helps. When I was talking to the U.S. American and Brazilian international officers about their conflicts, some of them had to do directly with culture. And the Brazilians criticized the Americans about being too focused on money and numbers. And not on the relationships that they were creating. And the Americans criticized the Brazilians for not responding to their email in 20 minutes, not being able to set up appointments, and for strikes, all the strikes that they've encountered, and for other challenges. I use those as examples when I think of an international student, and I'll talk about a U.S. American student coming here. Understanding something about Brazilian culture before they, or as they are interacting with Brazilians, will help them develop appreciation and understanding. Why doesn't this person respond, or why don't they tell me no? Why don't they? All these questions. So I think in reverse, it should happen the other way. I think that when Brazilian students go study abroad, it's important that they learn about the culture that they will be living in, that they learn to understand the culture, that they learn, for example, some of the stereotypes of Brazilians in other countries, and that they learn to handle those stereotypes. So as an intercultural specialist, I focus on those kind of things. yes, it's important to have help with visas and getting a CPF number and a bank account, and da, 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 da. But it's the cultural understanding that I think is the most important about it.
Okay. Thank you for the talk. My name is Andrea. I'm a professor at the Faculdade de Letras. I work especially with English teaching and teacher education. I don't have a very good, big experience in terms of internationalization. Last year, during my postdoc in Canada, I had the opportunity to visit two, let's say, not so big universities and one very small. And I took with me a folder that UFMG has, especially for this purpose of internationalization. And I wanted to have partnerships with these three institutions that I was in contact with. And one of the things that I heard from them is that these internationalization partnerships are extremely difficult to make. They take too long. And the second thing was that, yeah, we are very interested to talk about Brazil, but we already have too many of these partnerships. So, what I concluded is that one of the problems is that for these partnerships specifically, is that these partnerships have to be made on a one-to-one institutional basis. Would you suggest any strategy to overcome this problem? Do you have any other ideas in your experience, like what Science Without Borders is a program that doesn't involve one-to-one institution? But is there any other example that you know of? Anything else that you would like to share with us in this time?
Sure. I was working at a Brazilian institution a few years ago, and we were examining the partnerships. And they might have had 300 partnerships on the books, but maybe 50 were active. And they had to decide whether they were going to turn off, close down some of the partnerships. The best partnerships I know of, the ones that really have the most impact, have often started with one professor in Brazil and one professor in Canada sharing a research interest or an academic interest and collaborating informally. And then it moves to a memorandum of understanding between the two institutions that's limited in the beginning. It might be about sharing research. It might be about exchange of students. It might be between particular faculties of the two institutions. And then it grows carefully from there. In every country, God knows in Brazil, in the United States, in Canada, I imagine there are bureaucracies. And so these steps are taken slowly, often. But I think the best partnerships I know of start with two individuals and build from there. And so then it becomes part of the institutions. The individuals might leave the institution, but it started with an area of profound connection and interest and built from there. But I agree, some partnerships are not active, are not helpful, and those should be put to the side, and the really good ones. And then when you come and you go to Canada and you meet someone and they say, I want to work with you, then you build it from there. You're doing it in a more profound way, in a simpler way. I don't know.
breve, chegamos ao final dessa sessão. Eu gostaria de agradecer mais uma vez ao professor por este grande palestra e pela disponibilidade de discutir conosco os nossos desafios e estratégias para uma maior internacionalização, tanto em casa quanto com outros parceiros que nós possamos fazer ao longo da nossa vida acadêmica. Então, agradeço muito. Nós temos agora uma outra mesa, mas também eu gostaria de convidar, reiterar o convite à participação dos eventos de hoje à tarde, onde nós poderíamos também discutir especificamente algumas questões que nos interessam. O professor Márcio de Castro também está aqui, e fazer algumas perguntas em discussão desse campo, e também com relação às atividades pela manhã, que eu acho que são atividades concretas de GTs, grupos de trabalho, para propostas concretas de internacionalização que nós possamos fazer para a nossa instituição. Muito obrigada mais uma vez, professor Xavier. É um prazer tê-lo aqui conosco.
Ouviremos agora a apresentação do projeto 5%, que será feita pelo representante da delegação russa, o vice-reitor para assuntos internacionais da Tomsk State University, Sr. Artem Rykov.
É outra história, né?
Bom dia, prezadas colegas.
Bom dia.
It's my pleasure to be here, and all our group, having can be so bold to say, is absolutely fascinated with Brazil and with Belo Horizonte in particular. Why? Because it's probably one of the most overall friendly, open, culturally and religiously tolerant country. And it stares you in the face. It's absolutely obvious. And besides, it's warm here. So I'll be telling about the program of academic excellence that is underway now in Russia. Academic excellence programs are not a new thing. A lot of major world powers do have them in one way or another. And we entered into that in 2013. And there are two challenges there, I believe. First one is straightforward and simple, just to get there. Of course, into world university rankings and to get internationally visible. So we have to do regular things. We have to increase the number of scientific publications. We have to increase the number of international students and international employees, and other sorts of international cooperation. But the other thing is not so visible. It's the task to enrich world academia when we are there. I mean, when we get global, we have to enrich global science with the ideas that are new and really unique, because it's the mission of every academic institution. And there are some issues here underlying these two tasks. Why come to Russia? Why come to Brazil? Why come to China? Why come to India? Why come to South Africa? I always take the whole group of BRICS countries. First answer might be cynical and very practical, because all these nations offer world-class education at competitive prices. The other answer is also not that obvious. What we are in need badly now in academic world is new ideas. The ideas that are really original and unique. We are in need of the ability to look at the questions that we study, to look at our subjects with new eyes and kind of new stance. And new academic cultures are an opportunity to do that. So, of course, there are countries and academic nations, if I may say so, that are in no need of advertising, like UK, United States, France, Germany, Netherlands. But to limit your choice with these countries means to limit their capability of being intellectually inventive and curious. So I would strongly recommend to consider that possibility and to limit other nations outside its major circle. So this program of academic excellence now, it started in, the idea was much earlier than 2013. And currently, we have 15 leading Russian universities participating in that project. Why 5 months 100? According to the plan, 5 institutions out of 15, and in total we have 1,200 universities in Russia. So top 15 were selected for this test, and 5 of 15 have to enter the world top 100 by the US ranking by the year 2020. 5 out of 15, 100, the world top 100. That's why 500. So the description is here, and the measures, the steps, the critical steps that we have to take are on the right lower corner. So we have to increase all this in order to get that. Each institution is subject to enforced financial support from the states, from the state of Russia, in order to achieve this. And of course, we take into consideration world standards. So rankings are not that total, well, and the ultimate purpose. It's kind of indicator that you have to look at. And well, things that make rankings that important are listed here more or less. And key lines of the project are here. Well, expert of educational services. I have to say a couple of words about that. Well, as far as I know, Brasilia uses Cuban doctors a lot. You employ them, you invite them, they come here, you're basically satisfied with how they perform. And at the same time, Cuban doctors were either directly trained in Russia or they were trained for those trained in Russia, in Cuba. This fact is largely forgotten. So the purpose of increasing international export, of educational export, is actually the purpose of returning into international markets. So these are the lists of governmental decisions and the way that the roadmap administrative trip to our state now. And 15 universities that are participating here. All are here. 9 of these universities are in this room, and they will tell you about themselves directly in a few words. But the list of basic characteristics are on the right side. Well, you've seen at the map that this group covers roughly the whole area of Russia, from Moscow down to St. Petersburg to Paris. And you could see that basically most of the institutions are located in the European part, Moscow and St. Petersburg, which is natural, because most of the researchers are there and the leading scientists, leading schools are basically there. But the ministerial decision was very, I think, strategic because they decided to spread the research, decided to spread the efforts on the whole territory. And for us, it's a chance to increase our performance and quality thanks to this program. The program is supervised and led by Russian International Council. It consists of 2 more or less equal parts, 13 people in total. Half 6 of them are Russian representatives. The leader of the group is Dmitry Levanov, Minister of Education. And foreign members of the council represent distinguished institutions and are all experts in international education. You can see who these people are here. And their tasks, what they're actually doing is on the left. A month ago, we had a seminar of International Council in my town, Tomsk, and well, these procedures were very illuminating and inspiring to watch and participate in. So the task of building this 500 project had some critical steps. First one was selecting 15 institutions, and there were 2 steps. First, 68 universities were selected, and 36, and then 15. But each year, the institutions have to present their achievements, and their participation in the project might be reconsidered. They might be left behind, and other institutions might be included in the project, which makes it highly competitive. These are achievements that we already do have. I can speak about my institution in more detail, but it's more or less similar to all participants. The first point here is to increase the number of publications and feedback. But how did we do that? And what practically does that mean? In our example, in 2012, we had 423 publications in Web of Science and Scopus affiliated journals. In 2013, we had 1,343. So the number increased threefold. Most of the institutions did more or less the same. Of course, it puts the issue of quantity versus quality, but we can't see that, and we are trying to overcome that. The top achievement was made by Novosibirsk State University, and of course we use the advantages that we do have and did have at that time. And one of the biggest advantages of Novosibirsk State was its close connections to Siberian branch of Academy of Sciences. So they have very large research bases. They had 30 institutions, 30 research institutions incorporated or affiliated with Novosibirsk State University. That's why they could make the progress. And our university, County State, made it to 491. So we are in top 500 and made 100 points up in a year. Well, right now I'm turning to the presentation of particular universities. This is mine, County State, which was established in 1878 by the special decree of Emperor Alexander II. And for many years, it remained the only institution of higher education beyond Europe. So we were responsible for all academic, civic, law, medical elites for this whole region, from Ural Mountains up to the Pacific and from Arctic Ocean to Central Asia. The only institution was ours. And now we are fully comprehensive. We have 23 departments and institutes. We are not that large, but medium size. 16,000 students, and at the same time, 135 specialties and subject areas. From computer science, fundamental physics, which is the most cited group in Russia. It used to be in 2010, 11, and 12. Not only in fundamental physics, but among all research groups, our group of fundamental physics was the most cited. To arts and humanities. So we have that whole range. Of course, we have to concentrate upon selected number of areas that we put most of our resources to, because you cannot be excellent in all 23. So these 5 centers of excellence, here they are. Theoretical physics, high technology and medicine, biology, bioclimate and landscape, international cognitive research, semiconductor materials and technologies. I would say a couple of words about bioclimate and landscape. You have Pantanal in Brazil here. And this is probably the largest water-covered surface on Earth. And we have Masugan swamp, which is the biggest swamp in the world. And these two areas does affect climate critically. So some of the issues that we can study together are right here. And our experience in international master programs, we can start with, number of things. I mean, all our 15 universities. Students exchange, summer schools, winter schools, we all offer that. Most of our institutions offer scholarship programs for international students. We all have student services that solve the task of adjustment and socialization of foreign students. They pick up visitors at the airport, bring them to dorms, register them, solve all their everyday problems. So it's all done. Besides, we can invite foreign professors as employees, part-time or full-time, which is the way to communicate with them. And all our 15 institutions are offering courses and programs in English. Well, second institution is Novosibirsk State.
My name is student mobility program manager in University of Novosibirsk Academy, Siberia, minus 50 there, etc. You can imagine. And Novosibirsk is like very beautiful Siberia, and NSU is the best university of the city. Well, NSU is unique in Ekaterinburg, and it was initially built for different branch of Russian Academy of Science and Technology. And actually, we are NSU, and over there, 29 research institutes that we have in Ekaterinburg. We are 10% of all Russian Academy of Science. NSU was originally built not only as educational university, but as the source of scientific staff for the research institutes. And now NSU is directly evolving and progressing university with international connections, double degrees, short terms, long terms, internships, 6 English taught master programs. We launched them last year, and next year I believe our first international students will graduate. Also, NSU is the perfect place to implement all the ambitions of our current and former students. We have Novosibirsk Park, pretty the same as you have in Rio de Janeiro. We visited it yesterday. Actually, interesting thing here is that in Rio de Janeiro they said that it is a non-profitable organization, and our Novosibirsk Park does make money. We were entitled as most successful technopark, okay, in Russia. And okay, the most important thing here, rankings of Novosibirsk. You can see that generally we are the third best university in Russia, US the second actually, Moscow and Novosibirsk, then global Moscow, St. Petersburg, Moscow again, and we are Novosibirsk, then Greek, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and NSU. Then in physical sciences, we are actually in the first 100 of best world universities. We are 85th. So here we are, Novosibirsk State University of Siberia, Bulgaria.
And they have their own seat, actually. You're all federal.
Hello everyone, my name is Lena Atizina. I am from the Europe Federal University. I'm sorry, but I will speak in Russian, but don't worry, did that help. Так, Уральский федеральный университет был образован в 1920 году и находится в городе Екатеринбурге на границе Европы и Азии.
A Universidade Federal do Urais foi fundada em 1920 e fica na cidade de Ekaterinburgo, que fica na fronteira da parte europeia e asiática da Rússia, bem pertinho das montanhas do Urais.
Затем он был разделен на 2 университета классических и технических, которые в 2011 году снова объединились и основали 2 федеральных университета.
Na verdade, a universidade ela foi dividida um tempo atrás em 2 universidades, universidade clássica e tecnológica. Em 2011, essa universidade 129 setores de universidades foram unificadas e isso aconteceu em 2011, quando foi formada a Universidade Федерал Региона.
Сегодня Уральский федеральный это один из крупнейших университетов России и крупнейший вуз региона Свердловская область.
Hoje, a nossa universidade é uma das principais universidades da Rússia e a principal universidade da região do Свердловск.
Я не буду говорить, повторять то, что вы видите на слайде, хочу только обратить ваше внимание на то, что если говорить о научных исследованиях, то университет занимает 4-е место среди российских вузов по числу научных публикаций, индексируемых в фокусе Web of Science.
Na verdade, eu não vou repetir o que está escrito aqui na apresentação, mas gostaria de ressaltar que a nossa universidade, na área de pesquisas científicas, tem avaliação, está na 4ª posição dentro das universidades e nos centros de pesquisas na Rússia e também tem uma alta avaliação no nível internacional.
Если говорить о сотрудничестве с бразильскими университетами, то мы уже имеем такие примеры успешного сотрудничества с университетом штата Сан-Паулу, католическим университетом Рио-де-Жанейро. И также за последние несколько лет нашими учеными были опубликованы 8 научных статей совместно с бразильскими учеными из 5 университетов и национального парка.
Falando sobre a cooperação com universidades no Brasil, nós temos acordos de cooperação e nós temos relações com a Universidade Estatal de São Paulo, com a PUC Rio e recentemente foram publicadas 8 trabalhos científicos em conjunto desenvolvidos com essas parcerias brasileiras.
Спасибо за внимание. Надеемся на дальнейшее сотрудничество с бразильскими учеными.
E estamos esperançosos para aprofundar nossa cooperação com cientistas brasileiros.
Samara Aerospace.
I'm going to tell briefly about Samara Aerospace Union. About 12,000 students are educated now, and our university includes 7 faculties. For example, the craft engineering, engineering, and science, 1957, university started. Science, 1957, university started properly in the spacecraft engineering educational programs. And our educational degrees include specialist degree, master degree, doctor of science, and others. It's examples of scientific and technical qualities found in quality opportunity. The university develops cooperation with different space centers, and as a result, 2 satellites launched in 2013. It's our future. It's a big project and a very important project for us. It's a Copernic Center. They includes the Copernic Center includes different institutes, for example, advanced materials and technologies, biomedical systems, and computer optics. Thank you.
Adam Federal University.
Good afternoon. I'm the representative of Federal University, and you can see that it is one of the oldest universities in Russian Federation. It's on 1804, so last year it celebrated its 25th anniversary. And nowadays it is one of the leading scientific and education centers of Russia. And you can see that we have more than 47,000 students more than 1,000 international students coming to study from different countries. And we have more than 400 academic programs, and what is more important, we have data development programs and 10 academic programs, programs for students, 150 programs in English. And what is very important for the last 2 years, we have studied programs in English for medical students in medical and dentistry, and these programs are really popular nowadays within the knowledge students from India and various countries, for example. We have a great number of institutes within our university, and all of them are ready and all of them are very interested in cooperation with the students and faculty members in terms of science or education. But as already mentioned, it's not possible to be the best in all fields. So we consider these fields to be priority in our university. We have oil and gas, medicine and pharmaceutics, IT technology, and advanced materials. And we are particularly interested in cooperation, and making joint both scientific and education projects with the students and faculty members particularly in this area. Thank you.
Now the institution that masterminded the whole 500 project, High School of Economics, Moscow.
I'm glad to be Federal University mentioned your Federal University. And I'm the director of strategic planning of high school economics. And how to work about our project, Russian academic excellence project. I think it is important for our university that our 15 universities are united in their occupation. The occupation has name is global university. And in this occupation, I'm strategic. And now I have a presentation about our university high school economics, which is specific university of Russian university. And I think action helped me in that. Наша школа экономики один из уникальных университетов России, поскольку он является и классическим университетом, и специализируется в области экономики и социологии.
Well, High School of Economics is a unique institution because it specializes in, it's classical university, fully comprehensive. At the same time, its emphasis is on economics and social sciences, basically.
Это один из самых молодых университетов, где ему всего 20 лет. И за этот период времени это один из самых молодых университетов, которому всего 20 лет.
Well, it's also one of the youngest. It's only 20 years old, and the history of high school economics is a history of demonstrated success.
И в 1993 году от двух профессоров и 32 студентов этот университет стал огромным, 25 тысяч студентов и более 45, 4 кампуса в России и более 4 тысяч преподавателей.
Well, in 1993, they had only 2 professors and 32 students. Now they have 25,000 students and 4 campuses, not only in Moscow, but in other cities as well.
Конечно, как молодой университет мы имеем больше проблем, чем университеты известные в мире.
So we have more problems than other famous institutions because we are so young.
Это очень трудно для нашего продвижения.
And it's an obstacle to our rise in terms of rankings and competitiveness.
Но тем не менее, мы уже сейчас входим в сотню рейтинга US по development studies в области development studies.
Okay, still we already are in QS top 100 in developmental studies.
Лучшие 200 университетов в области экономики и эконометрики.
Top 200 universities in economics and econometrics.
И, как вы видите, мы сейчас уже признанный университет в области математики.
UFMG, we are a distinguished and recognized institution in mathematics.
Наш университет очень открыт глобальному миру.
We are very open to the global world.
И на сегодняшний день мы имеем полноценную программу бакалавриата совместно с Лондонской школой экономики.
Today we have joint undergraduate program with London School of Economics.
Один из лучших университетов в этой области в мире.
Well, it doesn't need any recommendations, further recommendations, just the best economic institution in the world.
И 38 совместных программ, которые полностью реализуются на английском языке.
And they have 38 joint programs in English.
И наши основные приоритетные области – экономика, социология, менеджмент, бизнес и математика.
Our top priorities are economics, sociology, management, business, and applied mathematics.
Thank you.
Good day. My name is Oleh Nagorny. I'm the first vice rector of National Research University, Moscow Engineering Physics Institute. Our university was founded during the Second World War, and the main purpose of the university was to solve the atomic project. After that, our university was subject to civilian problems. And for example, as you know, in the 1960s, our student and then professor, Nikolai Basov, was inventor of the laser, and together with the American scientist Towns, they got Nobel Prize. The main priority of our university is engineering, high energy physics, and atomic physics. We are in many the foreign famous collaborations. For example, you know, mega science collaborations, CERN, Brookhaven collaborations, and so on. Also, we are collaborate very close to International Atomic Energy Agency. We are proud that we are in several top rankings. For example, in BRICS rankings, we are in 100 top in US and science clarification. Also, we are in natural science ranking of the science clarification. And for example, we have the absolute maximum result in citation per person among all world universities. Our educational and research activity carry out through 10 centers. You can see on the left these centers, and we would like to invite Brazilian universities to collaborate with us. We know that several months ago, rectors and vice rectors of Brazilian universities were in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, in Russian universities. Now we are here, and I would like that these visits were not only polite events, but also we want to begin a real collaboration in science and education. In this document that I want to give authority of university,
we propose some first steps to collaborate. I don't believe that we can exchange many students and many professors among our universities, but let's begin with short visits. That's why I would like to ask to propagate our documents among Brazilian universities and Brazilian students and professors. Thank you so much.
Dear colleagues, the next institution, I'll present it briefly because while out of 15, I'm sure this one will be in the world top 100, and you can see, you will be able to see why. These are the people that either studied there or worked there, 10 Nobel Prize winners among professors and then alumni. It's a small institution, but it's very, very controlled. You can see the list at the bottom. Who won what? Now they are moving into fully comprehensive and more or less achieve that, and the area that they pursue is on the left. Yes, departments. They do have social sciences and humanities, but well, they might not need it. I cannot see. Now next. National University of Science and Technology.
Hello, everybody. You understood already that we are very many, yes? And really, Russia is huge. We also present Moscow University, National University of Science and Technology, UCS. By the way, there are more than 100 universities in Moscow and more than 2,000 in Russia. So you can understand that the scale of our operation can be very, very huge. We are not very big compared with other universities. We have approximately 1,500 students and 4 branches in different cities of Moscow. We're also proud of our Nobel Prize winner in physics. He lives in America, by the way, and our main directions of our priority is metallurgy, material science, mining, industrial economics, and IT. Really, I have, as others, many information in this slide, but I think it's too boring listening this from each university. I'd like to invite you to be closer and to recognize our universities back here today. We have information with us. Please come, please ask what is most interesting for you. And really for us, for me, for example, it's very interesting engineering, material science, metallurgy. You have faculty here. If possible, I would like to visit this department, and probably we will find ways, because we can speak a lot, but if we start sending only one student or only one teacher, it will grow into great decisions in the future. Thank you very much.
St. Petersburg Polytechnic University.
Good day, colleagues. My name is Nikita Golavit, and I'm a Deputy Vice President for International Relations of St. Petersburg Polytechnic University. So I will briefly give overview of the university, just key figures. So founded in 1899, now we are the biggest technical university of northwest part of Russia. So it's a general scale. We are a campus-based university on the north part of St. Petersburg, so about 100 hectares of campus area and 40,000 square meters of research and educational premises. So we have 10 institutes in key subject areas like power engineering, chemical engineering, IT, physics, and more than 24,000 students study at our university on almost 200 master programs. So as you see, more than half of our programs are in physics and natural sciences and engineering, and about 40% is social sciences and management, and of course we have a small portion of art and humanities. So here you can see our priority areas in the scientific directions, life science and microbiology, computer engineering, materials, and technology. So about our international activities, about more than 4,000 students annually study at our university, both on Russian language courses and programs, and also we have 20 master degree programs totally in English. So we are partnering with about 120 universities, so it's extensive collaboration in education, in double degree program, academic mobility, and totally for collaboration of about 400 universities all over the world. So, thank you.
Obrigado pela atenção.
Gostaríamos de informar que, concomitantemente com as atividades da parte da tarde, haverá na sala D504 uma reunião com a delegação russa para discutir parcerias. A quem interessar, por favor. Faremos agora uma pausa para o almoço, retornaremos às 14h30.